You're listening to Leadership Powered by Common Sense with your host, Doug Thorpe. Here's Doug.
Hello again, everyone. This is Doug Thorpe, and you're listening to another episode of Leadership Powered by Common Sense. Today, we're going to get into a place that many people who have pursued corporate careers find themselves. It's inevitable at some junction you start asking yourself the question, am I having fun anymore? Do I see and feel opportunity where I am? And you might get lured into the idea of either starting a business or buying a business, and in the process, becoming an entrepreneur. So my guest today is someone who has done a lot of work in that area. Her name is Erin Marcus. Erin, welcome to the show.
Thank you. I was listening to you. I'm like, you said, am I still having fun? And I was like, why am I doing this? I remember that moment. Like, why am I still doing this?
Well, and not to be facetious at all, but I myself have been through that. I think many people do get to that place one way or another, where the steady, somewhat guaranteed paycheck all of a sudden doesn't mean as much as it once did.
Right, and here's the thing: like, I had great coworkers. I had a great company I worked for. I was not having the stereotypical, I didn't leave with a chip on my shoulder. I didn't leave because I was mad.
Yeah.
But I still got to that point.
Well, and good point on your part there. I think, yes, to be clear, it's not always about getting totally burnt out or frustrated, but you begin to assess your life and your station in life and where you've been, what you would like to still do. And the answers usually, or again, not for everybody, but for many, come up, no, I need to be doing something different.
Right. Not this. Right.
Not this. And I think in my experience, it all boils down to that sense of, I would like to have more control over my destiny.
100%. That was a big part of it. The work we were doing started to feel contrived, right? It was work created to have work. And it started to feel, it could be influenced randomly by external things that I had no influence over, control over, input into, and it could all go away.
Yeah.
Right. It could just all, I think that's one thing we've become very clear is what generations have considered as security is now almost the opposite of security. That
I agree. Yeah.
Paycheck. Yeah.
Right. I agree. Yeah. And I've actually, the irony from where I sit is that, we used to joke about the 40 years and a gold watch,
right.
That's the end of your career. But the notion of people spending 40 years in one place is very, very rare today.
You know what I compare it to? And this is so random. If you think about now, I don't know your personal, so this could be wrong, but I know very, very few people who are married to and happy in that situation to the person they dated in high school. There's a few of them. But when I think about the person I dated when I was 16, 17 years old, there's no way that would be a good thing for me now. And yet, there was this idea that you get a job when you're like 20, 22 years old, and that should still fulfill you and be the path you're on when you're 60 years old. It's just crazy.
Right. No, I agree with you. And it is interesting. And people have heard me talk about this. I reflect on what happened during the crash of '08 and all the high job loss that was going on. And I created and opened up a nonprofit for job seekers. And one of the quick takeaways that I was learning was that most people, as sad and challenging as it was to have lost their job that they had been in for many, many years, It was a relief. It was a convenient exit
Right?
for totally restructuring their look at the world and their sense of self-fulfillment. Now, it's not to say it was an easy transition. It was not. But what we did in my nonprofit, we got people refocused on their sense of personal purpose. And, forget technical job title, but what do you think you were meant to do and meant to be, and what fulfills you the most? And some people pushed back and said, "Oh, Doug, that's woo woo, and that's all out there." But the majority didn't. The majority did the work that we designed for them, and they discovered a new self. And you could just see the elevation of energy and commitment and excitement when they locked in on what that could be.
I think most of us live our entire lives the way that I define that, and that was my path for a very long time. We live our lives in reaction mode. We don't intentionally set out to create the life we want. We get a job. Like my entire, revenue job related history was I got a job. I did good at the job. I got awards, I got bonuses, whatever. It led to the next opportunity. And so
Exactly.
I took the next opportunity. And I did that all the way up to C-suite right? And yet, at no time in that 25-year journey did I stop and think past get the next opportunity. I never really thought about what do I actually want to do all day long as an impact. And I was always blown away by sometimes you meet kids, right? You meet kids who know what they want from the get-go. They want to be this thing and they go to school and study that. I think that's an anomaly. I had
It
no
is.
idea.
I agree.
I had
Yeah.
no idea. And it took me years and also several stepping stones, truthfully. The first thing I did when I left corporate was the right next move, but it wasn't ultimately what I wanted. It wasn't where I was supposed to ultimately end up. It took several stepping stones of intention. And I think that's why it's hard, because once you start creating your life with intention, you also have to take responsibility for how it turns out.
Oh, wow. Yeah. Very good point.
Oops.
Oops.
Right?
Yeah.
Oops.
Oops. Gotcha.
Can't blame anyone for that, right?
Right.
It's that's a pressure you have to learn how to carry.
Well, I agree with what you said there, and I think the key word, and I promote this idea a lot, is being intentional. Trying to set a direction and let every day become intentional. And I don't mean turning into some kind of crazy person over the drive to get there, but there's no denying that those who do exert that kind of energy to be driven like that are the ones who generally always achieve the greatest things.
Well, and what I've been incorporating and embodying and working on lately is using intention to slow down.
Yes, I agree.
Right? Like that external goal, and the people who say, what's my intention so I can reach that external goal? Yeah, those are the ones that end up on the hamster wheel. Right? But if your intention could be a reminder, I call it setting my stage. So the work I do every morning is I set my stage to make intentional decisions instead of reactive decisions, not use the idea of intention to how could I get closer to this thing? Yeah, we have those moments and you have to do the work. None of this happens by magical thinking. You have to take all the actions. But what if your intention was every day to make sure you were staying true to your path instead of getting sucked in a reaction mode?
Agreed. I like that. Well, let's use that as a little bit of a segue into your theme of your book. Tell me the title again.
So this is so I have a whole brand part of my business is my podcast. It's the working title of the book of ready yet. It's ready yet. And the tagline is, you'll never do what it takes until you become the person it takes to do it.
Mm.
And this whole concept of, are you ready, came out of how I would find myself on sales conversations. So I would be having sales conversations with prospects, talking about working with me, talking about, whether or not we closed the deal was almost secondary, but talking about what it was that they wanted. What did they want to create? Whether it was their life, their business, like how were they putting this together? And they were telling me all the things that were going wrong and why it wasn't working. And I would find myself saying, well, are you ready then? Are you ready yet? Are you ready to be done with this? Because all of those things never change until you change. And for me, coming out of corporate, going back to where we started, coming out of corporate and coming out of my blue collar Chicago public school upbringing, nobody was more shocked than I was to find out that what I was doing as a small business owner wasn't gonna matter until how I could affect how I was thinking. And that was something I was unprepared to handle right in the beginning of that journey. And it became something that I've absolutely embodied and focus on. And so that's really what it is. You'll never do what it takes, whether it's to take more action or take less action, to take intentional action, or let go. Like, you'll never do what it takes until you become the person it takes to do it. It's got to come first.
So let's apply that to this scenario. The person that's sitting there in a corporate job and starting to noodle on this idea of going independent and either creating a business or buying a business. And by the way, folks, we can do a whole discussion about the amazing opportunities that are out in the market right now to buy an existing business that is already positive cash flow, well established, popular in their market, good brand, etc. Because we've got this phenomenon going on that's probably truly once in a lifetime. It's a generational transfer of wealth from the baby boomers that are wanting to exit their businesses.
Yeah.
And the vast majority of them are finding that there's nobody in their family that wants it because they've been living it their whole life, and it's like, oh,
they're over
it. Thing I want to do.
Right? They're over it. Yeah.
And no disrespect to that, but that leaves the founder owner in a lurch and a challenge. And there are some very positive things that can be done, and you might be really surprised at what little it may take to buy one of these businesses. I mean, in terms of personal cash on the table.
Right. I was going to add to that. Like, there's more tools than there were ever before to do these acquisitions.
Well, starting with the SBA is incredibly positive and bullish on that, because guess what? This is one of the, I never want to get political on my show, but this is one of the things where government has recognized the need, and they've adjusted policies and procedures to address the need. And it does make economic sense. There's, several $1 trillion of wealth tied up in these independent businesses that need to be sold. And
people don't realize the backbone of this country is small business, not large corporations.
Correct.
They have all the, fanfare, but the majority of the economy is run by small business.
Well, just drive down any main street anywhere and you look at the signs on the doors. To your point, the vast majority are privately held independent operators that are, they made a whole life out of running that business. And that's the point. So where I was going, that's a long intro into an idea. What I was going is there is a theme that has emerged, and I had a guest on my show recently that talked about this. He said he has been helping these wannabe entrepreneurs make that transition. And he said what he's discovered in 23 years of doing this himself, there are people who want to own a business, and there are people who need to own a business. And that's a very bright dividing line. And to lean into that, what it means is there are people that are sitting in that corporate seat, frustrated, maybe wanting to have a bit stronger hand in their own destiny, and they're saying, well, I want to go buy a business. Well, do you really?
Do you
Are
really?
you ready? Are you
Do
ready?
you really? Be careful what you wish for. I said for years, the best thing for me was I didn't know what I didn't know. Because if I would have known, I wouldn't have done it. So I'm very grateful for not realizing what I didn't know.
Right. Well, the other side of that equation I'm talking about is those who need to buy a business. And that's the person that essentially maybe has already given their resignation and said, I'm out, I'm done. Well, they need something. You know,
One of the things that I found to piggyback on that idea. So when I had my franchise, I was a trainer for the franchise system. And I mean, that's what I do. I do business coaching and consulting. And the thing that I have found that will tell you if you are going to pull this off or not is there's one very differentiating factor. If you are making the move because you are running away from something, you are mad at the job, you are mad at the man, you are mad at the tax, like whatever it is, it's unfair, whatever it is, if you are doing this in an adverse reaction to something, you bring all that you bring that with you. If, however, you are starting a business, buying a business to create more of whatever, it doesn't even matter, but with the intention of creation and growth, you will do what you need to do to figure it out. And that has been a delineation I've seen over and over and over again.
Yeah. Well, and I think that dovetails and overlays with the want versus need, because people say, I want to buy a business because they're pissed off, they're frustrated, they're mad, they're angry, they don't like their current situation. So they think the alternative is to go buy a business. I want to buy a business. Yeah, but if you
all that stuff only gets worse, by the way. It only gets harder.
You bring it with you, you know. It reminds me of the line of that great Harrison Ford movie, the 6 days and the 7 nights, or whatever, 7 days, 6 nights. He's this recluse on a tropical island, and you know, people fly in and want all the glamour, and he said, it's an island. If you didn't bring it with you, it's not here.
It ain't here, right? It's so true. It's so true. That was my big, if you want to talk about like where my personal awakening about all this came, is this realization. There's this horrible realization that happened once I was out in entrepreneur, small business owner land, that because I come out of corporate, bonuses, accolades, award, you know, the whole 9 yards. And so I thought I was brilliant, right? I thought, oh, look how smart I am. I got all this stuff. This is how, of course I can do this. The realization was then I was successful on a very narrow path that somebody else created.
Right.
And that is, right? And once those bumpers were out of the gutters, the wheels come off the bus, there's no guardrails. That is a whole different world.
Totally. We you know, we get into one of the first realities this transitional entrepreneur faces is you come to a quick reality of what is your risk tolerance.
What is your risk tolerance? And also my first meltdown, this was awesome. My first meltdown, my first entrepreneur, one of many, was when the printer wouldn't print. And I realized I had nobody to call. Like, I didn't even know where to begin to get the printer to print. Yeah. That was not a thing. Brian, for a decade, made my printer print in corporate. He was a phone call or a hallway away, right? And if something didn't work, Brian came over and made it work.
Right.
luckily had his cell phone number and snuck in a few extra calls to Brian even
Yeah.
after I left. But Ray, I mean, you don't realize what you don't know. And the other piece of that realization is you're a part of a process, right? No matter how autonomous and big and fancy your job is, you're actually part of a process. And then you become a situation. And this is also, by the way, why buying a business can often be a better idea than starting one, is once there are no processes to be a part of, what are you going to do?
Right. Right. Yeah, it's totally that taking on that mantle of being an independent entrepreneur is definitely like being up on the trapeze with no safety net.
And only one finger on the trapeze.
Not every day, but not every day. But yeah, and to your point, what comes to mind is the old joke about if you're an entrepreneur and CEO, you're chief everything officer, and you've got your hands in everything. But and that's another whole different discussion about how to look at buying these companies, whether or not there's an existing leadership team involved. And
well, that's another opportunity right now, because with all of these layoffs, there's magnificent talent out there available.
Right, right. So true. Well, let's talk a little bit more about some of the learning in your book. What are some of the other things that you have discovered in this notion of asking a client, "Are you ready yet?"
You ready yet? So, like, there's certain traits. The fear, right? What's your risk tolerance? But it's also the resiliency. How fast there is a peak performance book that talks about this. How fast can you recover from a problem? So, for example, as an entrepreneur, I could be fighting with the printer won't work. I could be dealing with 800 different problems, but now I've got to get on a sales call, or I've got to get on a podcast, or I've got to get on a stage and show up as my best. And how are you able to do that when the first half of your day didn't go well? And I watched Gary Vee did a video about this that I thought he's been talking about it a lot lately, where it's like, how okay are you with making mistakes? Because too many entrepreneurs right now, and this is a little bit younger generation, but I think too many entrepreneurs in general, they're scared to make mistakes, right? They want to he did a whole video about the problem is most people want to make 3 decisions and have those 3 decisions work out. And that's not how this works. He's like, I want to be 118 and 72. How fast can you recover from things not working, from bad experiences, from people being mad at you, from decision fatigue? And in the book Peak Performance, they use tennis players as an example, because they have their opportunity to recover is from the time they walk from the net when they've missed a volley to back at the line. And if they can recover in that 3 seconds and get their heart rate back down, get their focus back on point, that's how you win. And so that resiliency recovery factor, or the ability to compartmentalize when you need to, right? If you carry the weight of a problem with you for days and weeks and even hours into the next situation, it's hard.
Well, and to your point on the 118 and versus 72, it is written and talked about that Jeff Bezos, in the creation of Amazon, one of his tenets and one of his values was let's fail fast.
Fail fast.
Let's take an initiative, do something. If it doesn't work, fine. Let's take our learnings and move on to the next thing. And that again speaks a little bit to risk tolerance. It's like, well, if you're risk averse, you're going to analyze the situation to death and likely miss the opportunity.
Well, and it's not just fail fast. You said it also, take the learnings. That's where I think people miss. They fail, and then they reinvent the wheel. And that's not failing faster, that's staying stuck in a spiral. Because failing faster is about taking the data. So the tagline, so my business is called Conquer Your Business. My tagline is be in charge, take action, get results. And it's really a decision-making matrix. Because be in charge is personal responsibility, make a decision. Take action, do the thing, get results. Not the results you want, just any results.
Right.
And use that to start at the beginning and make a better decision. Not starting over.
No, that's right. And you know, there's a famous team leadership building exercise, and I'm drawing a blank exactly where I heard this the first time, but it has to do, you can see the classic, and this is often in corporate, but it works in small business too. You have your leadership team assembled, and you get smaller teams gathered around a table, and you give them straws and bubble gum and a ping pong ball or something. You're supposed to build a structure that's going to support the ping pong ball. Okay. Well, studies have been done on this exercise, and what they find is, guess what? Kids age 6 to 10 do better on this exercise than high-paid executives. And why? What happens, what's been observed in these sessions when they've done these studies, the kids immediately go to work building something and failing fast. Okay, that didn't work, let's do something else. That didn't work, let's do something else, da, 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 da. And pretty soon they've found the solution, and the structure is standing there, while all the high-powered executives haven't even put the first stick to the assembly because they've been analyzing, they've been negotiating, they've been debating or discussing what would work. They haven't even tried it yet. And so
it's why I'm completely unemployable at this time. I am now completely unemployed because I can't handle that anymore.
Amen, sister.
I'm so unemployable. My boyfriend, so we live. My office is up in the loft. His office is down in the basement. We meet at the coffee maker several times a day. And during the course of the day, he seems to migrate into the kitchen almost every day. He slowly, all of a sudden, the computer and everything is in the kitchen. So I overhear his meetings. He's at a national manager level with a wonderful financial services company. They're great people. They really are great people. But I overhear their meeting, and they put together a series of 3 meetings for 5 people to determine the name of an internal training program that compliance then shut down. I can't handle that. You've got to fail in the marketplace. Like, have you vetted your offer? This is another mistake I watch people make. Like, there's a couple things when you leave corporate, going back to our theme, that will serve you well. Delegation, number 1. Work ethic, number 2. Those will serve you well as a small business owner. But one of the things that will kill you is this risk adversity. Because corporations are 100% risk adverse. Keep my name off the front page of the newspaper, for the wrong reasons. Entrepreneur, small business, you grow in the marketplace. You don't test with millions of dollars in a lab. You test in the marketplace. And if you haven't vetted your offer by making sure people even want the thing, and you spend all this money and time and energy and effort building a machine around something you don't know if anybody wants. And I see that over and over and over again. And truthfully, it's because people are scared they're going to get feedback that no one wants right? Everyone else thinks your baby's ugly, right? That's what you're worried about, right? But it's the only way you can survive.
Yeah. For some reason, this is a really weird tangent, but I'm going to throw it out there. The last company I owned and sadly had to close during the crash because we were mortgage related at the time, and we were ground zero for the crash. But up until that time, we were in an office building that had this large interior atrium kind of thing. And across the hall from my suite of offices was the headquarters of a regional restaurant chain. And their test kitchen was in that office suite. And we got to where, because of course everything was glass on both
Right.
sides, we got to where we would signal the people in the kitchen whether their stuff smelled good or not.
Right,
We were like,
exactly.
whatever you're doing today, that's
We're
good, or
doing, keep
no,
doing
no,
that.
no, get rid of
It's
it.
so
So
true.
that was their test marketing. And
It's
it got to where they would, and you could smell the things wafting through the atrium there. They would come peek at the window and see what we were saying about
right.
it.
You need that though, right? Unfiltered. It's not, and this is where here's another thing. That separation between you, your value, your worth, your worthiness, right? And your business.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you see it's so hard because in a small business entrepreneur, there is no separation between you and your business. It's so tangled together. But if you can't separate whether or not something sells or doesn't sell from your feelings about yourself as a human, it's brutal. It's going to make you scared to do things. It's going to make you not resilient and recover. And that gets a very messy trap.
True, and that's a very good point. Anybody that does choose this path to entrepreneurship who has any kind of fear about failing or fear of new things is going to
And you can have the
struggle.
fear. Here's the thing, we all have it. Can you be scared and do it anyway?
It's your relationship with that fear and doubt, right?
What I call it, people, what's that phrase? New level, new devil.
Yeah,
I have
yeah.
a different phrase. New level, same devil, different outfit. Right? Because the fear is the fear. It just gets a little trickier and a little more insidious and a little better at hiding until you don't realize that it's the same problem you thought you saw. My one friend and I joke around. We're like, how did I hire my mother again? I thought I was done with this problem, right? And yet here we are.
I had a company owner on a round table I was hosting a few years ago, and as we always did in the mastermind, we would kind of go around and have a check-in and everything. And one day he showed up and he said, I think I'm going to bring my wife back into the business. And everybody in the room went, oh no, oh no, don't do that. And it wasn't just the idea of husband and wife, but we knew this guy. He had already done this twice, and and it didn't work either time. And everybody said, well, what's going to be different this time,
And the most brilliant people, and here's the thing, the most brilliant people, how is that saying? You can't read the label from inside the glass.
Yeah, yeah.
It has nothing to do with whether or not you're smart enough to catch the pattern. None of us can read the label, right? The top heart surgeon in the world cannot perform his own open heart surgery.
Right. Yeah.
Just saying.
For sure.
Just saying.
Well, so let me ask you this: in your experience, let's go down the gender path. Is there a different mentality between men and women trying to take this journey?
Oh yeah, absolutely. The non-politically correct answer, I have to convince my female clients to realize how amazing they are. And I have to let most of my male clients know they're not quite as amazing as they think they are. It's upbringing. It's nothing, and this is where I don't have kids and I have a bit of an external observer. We teach boys they're amazing, and we teach girls that they exist to serve other people. And we just do this across the board. And there's so many movements to try to solve, this is why representation matters. And pick your representation group. This is why representation matters. Girls are literally raised not knowing, right? We learn from the world around us. They're literally raised not only to repress so that we don't make other people uncomfortable. Don't let your light shine so bright because we don't want to make anybody uncomfortable. But boys will be boys. And we carry that with us. We carry, and truthfully, it's kind of, it's all part of the, this is not an excuse, by the way. This is a give yourself a break, but don't let yourself off the hook. And this also doesn't mean that guys don't carry the load. Here's the opposite, where men get trapped, where the heartbreak. They stay in jobs they hate because they're trapped, because they have to support a family, where women are allowed to do riskier things because they're not necessarily seen as being responsible for the family finances. So, right, there's no, this is not a one-sided situation. But I watch more men be trapped by the golden handcuffs of a job they're miserable at because of the weight of the responsibilities that keeps them from being allowed to take the risk they might otherwise be able to take.
Right. And yeah, it's often because of a lifestyle they've created. And,
Yeah.
you live in the big house with the maybe even gated community kind of thing and membership at a club somewhere. And it's hard to think about walking away from that, especially if, you've got a wife and a couple of kids and you're
it's
looking at college.
Yeah.
And
I mean,
all
and
of
it's
those things.
interesting, as I am now the age where so many of my friends' kids are going to college, and even my brother whose kids are going to high school, and going to high school. On one hand, and it's interesting to me how we can get polarized. It's like we're seeing that in our society in 8 million different ways, that we're becoming more polarized. When if you just talk to people, most of us are in the middle, and yet everything we see is so polarized. So going back to the gender situation, you're seeing a time where women have more opportunity than ever before, when women, right? But at the same time, our rights are being yanked back left and right. You're seeing generation after generation appreciate experiences over stuff. Like, this is a great evolution. And yet we're also watching more pressure than ever on these kids to get into the right college. Like,
Right.
this juxtaposition of polarization at the same time. And, who knows what that's leading to. But hopefully more of them are not creating the lifestyle. They want the experiences over the lifestyle. And yet those experiences are getting more and more expensive as well. I mean, it is,
yeah, quite a conundrum. Well, anything else in your ready yet thinking that we haven't covered?
in my ready yet thinking, yeah. The bottom line, unfortunately, you can't think your way through any of this stuff. You can only act your way through it. You have to get quiet. You have to find your place of calm, your source of calm, your source of inner reflection, so that you can tap into your intuition. And I say that because if you can't tap into your intention and your intuition attached to that intention, you will become very susceptible on your entrepreneur journey to other people's intentions and other people's marketing. And that all comes from within. But even doing all that work, you can't think your way to success. You can only act your way through all of this, because none of it matters, right? None of it matters until you take action. The whole build it and they will come, like, no, there's no dreaming version of this that works. This is, you wiggle your way up. It's new belief, new action, new belief, new action, or new action, new belief, it doesn't matter where you start. You can act as if and do the thing that scares you until your belief matches your actions, or you can work on your beliefs and take the action to follow. But it all wiggles up. And if you kind of like two poles, if you try to go too far on one side, not the other, you hit friction and you get trapped. And it can go on either side, but you cannot solely think your way through this. You can only act your way.
I like that. And I'm thinking of so many things, and again, a little bit of a tangent, but as you were saying that, I'm reminded, when we the idea of belief and act, and it can go either way. The belief can drive an action, or the action can inform a belief and perhaps a new belief. And that's where market research and response from the market guides you. And that reminded me that company I alluded to that I had to close after the crash. It was a service company that about four other players in the national scene had kind of emulated. So there were five of us kind of competing in the market for this particular service. And of course, the crash happened and all five of us had to close because of the crash. And I had an opportunity at a later date to kind of huddle with the founder owners of all the other enterprises. And we were kind of regaling and post-mortem on our experience. And the bottom line was we all came to a conclusion. We had chased a vision for a service that was not wanted or needed by the market.
Brutal, right?
We were in our own weird way, we were looking at what the other one was doing, and we were adjusting accordingly to try to build these empires. And for the entrepreneurial mind out there, it wasn't a bad. I mean, it was my particular version of it. We were grossing about $5 million a year, and there was about $1 million EBITDA getting spit out from it. So you could call that working well as an entrepreneur. Right. But the reality was, it wasn't really going to go anywhere. It
wasn't sustainable. It was working, but it wasn't sustainable.
And it was a grind because customers would come in, and these were basically mortgage lender entities that were our customer targets. And of course, mortgage companies come and go, and so you would lose a client company because they merged with somebody else that didn't want to do our thing, or they were already working with the other one, and it was back and forth, yin and yang. And it was just, but again, without going all the way through it, we realized it was, we had all cast our vision and cast our lot for a service that wasn't really needed by the market. So,
and it happens all the time. You get very, and it doesn't mean that wasn't needed when it started. It doesn't mean that the opportunity wasn't there when you started. I just did a video about this because I had the most insane experience at the DMV to change the address on my driver's license. I had to change the address on my driver's license. I was only there for a total of an hour, which is like nothing short of a miracle. But I talked to 9 different people in an hour to change an address. And we do that. I see this in small business. Like I have no choice. You get arrested or at least a ticket if you don't, right? But when all you're doing for your business is looking internally to solve business problems instead of externally to solve client problems, it's not sustainable. And that's how you end up with these complicated, convoluted businesses that people stop working with.
Right. It is. It's bizarre. Well, Erin, I'll tell you what, we all do it. I feel like you and I could go on for a couple more hours, but we're not going to burden our audience with that. I do want to bring this to a close. So tell folks the best way to get a hold of you if they're interested in learning more.
Make it real easy. It's all at conqueryourbusiness.com. You can grab my podcast. You can reach out to me. You can get to everything you need just by going to conqueryourbusiness.com.
Awesome. Well, one last time, thank you so much for sitting in and sharing. It's been a real joy. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, folks, with that, we are going to sign off here. We will have Erin's contact info in the show notes, so feel free to mash the click there and get over and check out her other things. And I do want to mention, I alluded to it, but I'm working with a national agency called Acquira that is helping entrepreneurs who want to explore the notion of buying a pre-existing business. You can get a business in a box solution there for showing you the gauntlet that this may take, working you through all of the steps and the process. and they are available at acquira.com. You will see my name in that group when you get there. But if you want to know more about it and would like to talk to me directly, you can use my contact info, which is also in the show notes. So with that, we're going to say goodbye, sign off, go out there, make it a great day.
You've been listening to Leadership Powered by Common Sense, hosted by Doug Thorpe. If you would like to know more about the coaching and advisory services he provides, visit dougthorpe.com.